Hello everybody and welcome to Azure Samurai. On this episode we will be continuing the series dedicated to Squadron and evolve the previous episode Quickstart, implementing another provider and then mixing both of them. So let's go. If we remember, we ended up with this application that executed a test in Redis. If we execute it, we bring now Docker, we'll see the container being created. Yeah, running, then exited. That was a bit how Squadron works. And now, if you remember, we also added the Mongo provider and Fluent Assertions that we use to improve a bit the readability of the test. As we added the Redis, we are going to add now a new test for Mongo, but before we will add a provider for it. Not a provider, repository. We have to add the driver, something queue that we will use. Some extensions. And next we will be implementing this class that we will use for adding and retrieving users. And we will implement as well and get all users as well. So we will be adding here a variable to represent the Mongo database. I think it's better if we put MongoDB. Yep. And we will add that on the constructor. Next, we will add async for a user, the same user we are using in Redis. In all the code, we'll do the same here. So the first thing that we will do is we'll get a collection. If the collection does not exist, will be created using the Mongo database object. And that collection will be used to store, obviously, users. Once we have the collection, we will insert one user asynchronously. And that's basically it. Pretty simple. Now we'll add get all users. Sorry. And we will return an enumerable of users here. We will do the same. We will get the collection representing the users, and we simply will return this collection as queryable. And as we promise to return an enumerable, we will convert it to a list. And that's not a Mongo client, That's a collection. That's why it's called col. And as mentioned, we will return this collection as queryable and convert it to a list. Next, we will get the user. How we will retrieve the user? Well, we have the ID, so we will do that by the ID. Here we will do the user. The usual will retrieve the collection for the users, and then with this collection as queryable, we will simply use linkio. That's why we added the MongoDB.driver.linkio to get the one that corresponds to the ID that we pass by parameter. Now we can query it. That works. All right. That's done, and now we will implement a test. For the test, we will do in a very similar way to what we did for Redis. So we'll add a class file, and we will add this iClass fixture, and instead of Redis resource, we will add the Mongo resource. And if we remember, that's what makes the magic of enabling that every test fixture. That means every test in the test class will be able to retrieve a resource, and a container will be created for that test and will be disposed. So every test will be isolated from each other automatically, and that's pretty cool. Now we add the Mongo resource. Yep. And in the constructor, we will add the Mongo resource that we can pass as parameter or inject it. Now we'll create a test, and we will put that when we add and retrieve a user, both have to match. So we'll do the usual range, act, and assert for a test. First, the proper name with adding and retrieving a user, both must match. Yep. Now the range, act, and assert. We'll create the user with the constructor. the builder pattern, that we could say. We retrieve a database, and we create a new instance of the repository with that database. No. New user repo. We pass it to the database. Yes. And for acting, we simply add the user that we created. User from DB, we could put it in act or in assert, but I think it's part of the action. So we get the user from the database using the repo, get user async with the ID of the user that we just created. With uppercase. And now we just have to assert that the users should be equal one to each other. And for that, I think we don't add it. No, I need to add the Fluent Assertions, but I'll do that in a moment. I think it's like should be equivalent or equal to. Something like that, and we should add the reference they're using. Yep, perfect. Let's try it. Okay, it's created and it's running and it's exited, and the test passes. Alright, so we added a different provider and we created and implemented a test. Now we are going to do two providers on the same test class. So we are going to mix the Mongo provider and the Redis provider. For that, we create a MongoDB and Redis tests. Yeah, text. A couple more, like Redis, Squadron, and yeah, why not, XUnit. Alright, here we need to add the iClass fixture, that we can add them comma separated. One for Mongo, the Mongo resource, and the other for the Redis resource. Of course, we will enable to add them on the constructor as usual, so I will add a private read-only Mongo resource and a Redis resource. Sometimes this AI power intelligence is more confusing than helping. All right, no, not really. Now it's good. Now for the constructor. Yep. Some assignations, and we can move to the test. Now for the test. We will do exactly the same. We will implement that when we add a user, we will add it to Mongo and Redis, and both have to match the original user. And Redis both match the original user. Original is better. Again, the same. Arrange act and assert. No, didn't want to do that. We'll create the user. Then get the Mongo database. Then we will create the MongoDB repository with the user repository that we have created earlier. And we will get the Redis DB connection and create a cache with that connection. Yep, user cache with passing as parameter the connection should be. And for adding, we can add the user using the repository. Should be add async with the user. Just the user, that should be enough. And we can use the Redis repository to simply add the user. And now we can retrieve the users from Mongo and Redis. we do that with the ID, not that ID, the user one. Yes. And the same for Redis, the same way that we did on the first walkthrough. So we get the user from the cache. For that, we already implemented that method. So I know that's a pretty nice violation of try principle, don't repeat yourself, but for a simple example, that should do. And the resource is not recovered, so I need to use the Redis resource there. Yep. Exactly. And there we go. Here we are using the Fluent Assertions to make the assert more readable. Simply saying that the user I got from the database, the MongoDB, should be equivalent to the created user, and the user retrieved from Redis should be equivalent to the created user. And let's try if that's true. So let's build. No, wrong button. So now we are going to execute and to test, and we will see how the two containers are created and the test pass. I think I tested everything, but you can see that both are being created and disposed of, and the test passes. So that's it. See you on the next one.